You know, if you spend enough time on the internet.com, you're going to inevitably end up seeing things that might scare you away from aquariums. Today, I'm going to try to make sure that doesn't happen. Doing what I do for a living, I spend way too much time online, but it's kind of my job, so that's how I justify it. But I see a lot of things in comment sections of videos, in live chats. I even get personal communications from people by way of email and Instagram and Facebook, which if you ever want to get a hold of us, don't do it that way. Do it by email. I'm old. I'm not on Facebook and Instagram looking at DMs and all of that kind of stuff. Don't slide into my DMs. I don't know. Is that an inappropriate thing to say? I'm too old to know. Anyway, there's a lot of things that I see quite regularly. And if I'm being honest with you, they piss me off because, like I said in the intro, a lot of these things are things that could scare people away from the hobby. And so over the course of the next several weeks, as we prepare for our next Tanks of Our Lives video, I'm not going to be able to do those every week. I just can't keep up with that. It's way too much. We need to be able to have good, valuable content for you in between those episodes. And so that's what these videos are going to be. At least that's what my plan is. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I want to take some very common issues that I see regularly and either say, yeah, this is a real problem, or debunk those problems so that we don't get people scared away from the hobby, because we need this hobby to grow, not only so that I can continue to make a living, but also so that our hobby can continue to get better. And the first thing, I'm not putting these in like any particular order of importance. I'm just kind of doing them as they come into my head. And I just turn the camera on and we see what happens. A lot of times that ends up getting me in trouble, but I'll try to control myself. But one of the things that I see all the time is that you need to drastically alter your water parameters to accommodate certain fish, or really whatever fish you're going to keep. And this one is one of those that makes me crazy. Not totally crazy, because sometimes it's true, but most of the time it's absolutely not. And so if you're new to fish keeping, this is going to be something that's going to help you out a lot, because it's only going to be a matter of about 5 minutes of going on the internet, doing your research about your first aquarium, where you're going to see that. You're going to see people say, oh, if your water is like this, you're going to have to do this to it, and you're going to have to do that to it in order to be able to keep those kinds of fish. That's the kind of thing that could be way intimidating for a lot of people, including me. It's something I will not do. And I understand if people are scared away by that, because it's like, well, I just want to put water in the tank and look at the fish. I don't want to have to mess around with all that nonsense. I totally understand that. I'm here to tell you, though, don't run from this. Don't run away because you think you're going to have to do a science project in your aquarium. Yeah, aquariums are science, but you don't need to run this full experiment to get your pH a very specific way. You don't always have to do that. But again, there are certain circumstances where you will need to do that. Let's get those over with first. There's two scenarios that pop into my head that I would definitely say, if you're going to get into either one of these things, you're probably going to want to adjust your water, unless you have the perfect water. We can certainly talk about that, but there's just these two things that pop into my head. If you have other situations where you feel water needs to be drastically adjusted to accommodate fish, let me know in the comments. But the ones that pop into my head, which there's not a whole lot of room in there, so, you know, take that for what you will. But the two things that pop into my head are breeding and wild caught fish. These are two examples where, yeah, you're going to need to make some adjustments. Now, don't automatically get scared, because this doesn't mean if you want your fish to breed, you have to do this. But with certain fish, there are some fish that are more particular about their water parameters, and things need to be a certain way in order to get them to breed. So if you're not concerned about breeding, if you just want to keep fish and you don't want the hassle of saving a bunch of baby fish and all of that, there are a lot of people out there that don't really want to mess with that. If that's you, you ain't got to worry about this. But there's going to be, if you're going to start up a breeding project and you want to breed a very specific fish, you may need to adjust your pH, your GH, your KH in order to get them to spawn, because otherwise, yeah, they'll thrive, they'll survive, they'll do just fine, but they might not breed for you. And so if that's not a concern for you, if you're not trying to breed any fish, then you don't even need to worry about this. But if you do want to breed certain ones, what's the list? I'm not going to go through all of that because if I'm being honest with you, I don't even know. The only fish I like to breed are fish that are easy to breed. So I don't get all caught up in that. But again, just repeating myself, this is what I do when I'm not working off a script. There are certain fish that you're going to need to make these adjustments with. So if you're brand new to fish keeping and you're not thinking about baby fish yet, don't worry about it. But if you are someone that's been in this for a while, you're looking to take your hobby to the next level, just understand, depending on what fish you keep, you may need to make some adjustments. But my advice to you would be, don't do that. Don't adjust your water to breed fish. Breed fish that will breed in your water. At my age, just best to keep things simple. And then the other is wild caught fish, which wild caught fish has never really been something that I've been big time into, but there are certain fish that are only available wild caught. They haven't been able to figure out how to breed them in captivity yet. Again, what's that list of fish? I don't know. Google it if you want to know that list of fish, but there's a lot of fish. A great example is something like cardinal tetras. I'm not saying they won't breed in captivity, but we're talking about one of the absolute most popular fish in the hobby. Every single fish store on planet Earth has those. And I guess they can't keep up with demand breeding them in captivity. So a lot of the cardinal tetras that you're going to run into at your pet store are indeed wild caught. Now, these are very hardy fish, contrary to what a lot of people might say about them. They're very hardy, but they do, if they're wild caught, they do want their water to be a certain way, and your tap water might not cut it. Just think about it. If somebody grows up in Antarctica, if anybody even lives there, and then they move to Africa, it's going to take them some time to adjust to that new climate, because we're talking about the complete opposite of what they're used to. With wild caught fish, it's the same way. Again, I'm not crazy about the idea of removing a fish from a body of water that's really, really, really big and bringing them, putting them in a little glass box. I don't know. That's just me, somebody that makes a living putting fish in glass boxes. It's never been something that's set well with me. Not saying I've never had wild caught fish. I have. I'm not against them. I don't know. It's just a weird thing for me. It's just one of those things. I don't know. I don't go ooh ah when I see a fish that's wild caught. It's not impressive to me. In fact, it's the opposite. So this isn't something that I'm concerned with, but you could see how it's kind of common sense. If they're from a very soft water in the Amazon, if their particular area that's super soft and your water is super hard, like mine is that comes out of the tap here in North Carolina, you are going to have to make some adjustments to keep those fish. So if you don't want to make those adjustments, don't go for those wild caught fish. I would actually recommend you go with the captive bred ones. And that's the next thing that we have to talk about, because this is the overwhelming majority of this hobby and of this industry. And for you people that are not looking at breeding and you're not looking at keeping wild caught fish, this is going to be like the best news you've ever heard in your entire life, especially if you're a new fish keeper, or maybe you're somebody that was just taught you always have to adjust your water to accommodate fish. Well, this might change your life too. And for you, you're welcome. I'm happy to be of service. Something that not everybody is aware of is what happens at fish farms when your fish that you have in your aquarium were bred. I don't care if these farms are in Indonesia or Thailand or Vietnam or the United States. It's pretty much a unanimous strategy with all of these farms that they do not drastically alter their water to breed those fish. They don't do it at all, because we're not talking about little fish rooms with 26 tanks in them. We're talking about acres and acres and acres of big ponds and all different types of water vessels, whatever you want to call it, where they're breeding these fish. Massive thousands of gallons that they're breeding these fish in. How could they possibly, you think they're going to go around with baking soda and adjust their hardness and all this No, that's ridiculous. They're not going to do that. They're going to work with exactly what comes out of their tap. Now, a lot of times, like particularly in the tropical fish industry on the freshwater side, like African cichlids and things like that, a lot of the farms that you're going to find are way, way, way down south, like in southern Florida, particularly the Homestead area, where the water's super hard. It's a tropical climate almost year round, and it's a setting that's very similar to what they would see in Africa. Maybe not quite as extreme, but I've been down to Homestead, and I'm going down there again very soon, and it's really hot down there and super humid. Lisa's hair gets frizzy and she complains all day. It just is what it is. So it's the closest thing to that climate in the United States that you're going to find. And so because the water is so hard down there, and because it's a tropical climate, it's prime conditions to breed African cichlids. So a lot of the African cichlids that you're going to find in the United States being bred in the United States are going to be bred down there because it's the optimal conditions to do it. You're not going to find, I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist, but you're not going to find a mass producing African cichlid farm in an area that doesn't have water that's conducive to breeding. I hope that makes sense. Like a place that has super soft water, you're probably not going to find African cichlid breeders because they're going to be dealing with so much water. It would just be out of control to try to adjust the water to get them to breed prolifically, to be able to keep up with whatever your demand is prolifically. Did I say that word right? I hope I did. I need to see it written down. Otherwise I look like an idiot. Anyway, another great example of this is a company that to me is like Lord Voldemort. It is a name that will not be named anymore because I'm very mad at this company, but I can at least tell you where they're from and you'll probably be able to figure it out. There was a particular discus breeder in Germany. Guess what they did? They took these fish that are from the Amazon and are from very particular conditions that for the longest time, for decades, the hobby said you have to do these massive adjustments to your water in order to keep discus because they're so fragile and you have to keep them that way. Otherwise, they're all going to die and they're not going to breed. Well, this company in Germany said, screw all that. I'm not playing around with doing all of that. We got water out of the tap that's like 7.8. That's what we're going to run with. And guess what? We're going to become one of the most well-known breeders of discus in the world, known for producing super hardy, easy to keep discus that can most likely just be kept in your straight up tap water that you have if you're in the United States. But again, they're like Lord Voldemort. I'm not going to mention their name because I'm pretty pissed off at them. They screwed over one of my friends and I don't like that. So screw that company. But they're a good example of how fish will adapt to their environment. And it may take some time, but eventually, through a few generations and stuff like that, they'll adapt to it and they will breed prolifically. I didn't look that up either. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that word right. At 51, you would think I would know how to say that word, but they figured it out and it worked. And it changed the discus industry forever because before them, discus were these elusive, really difficult fish that were reserved for only the advanced fish keepers. Not so much anymore. But the biggest thing that I want people to understand is farms are breeding in the water that they have, or distributors are importing fish and they're keeping them in the water that they have. They're not doing these massive adjustments to their water to accommodate the fish. They're not doing any of those things because it's just not feasible to do all of that. There's not enough money in fish to be able to do that and actually make money at the end of the day. So they have what they have as far as water goes. They bring their fish in, they put them in that, and that's what they use. So when they ship their fish to fish stores and then you go and buy them, guess what? They have never been in this water that's drastically adjusted. And I can assure you, your fish store isn't doing that either. How many fish stores have you been into that have hundreds of aquariums? You think they're going through every single tank and putting crushed coral in that one and putting driftwood in that one and putting peat moss in the sumps to adjust everything over? If they're doing that, they ain't making no money. I can promise you that, because it's too time consuming and it's too expensive to do that. So they're filling up their aquariums with water, probably out of the tap or out of their well, and they have what they have. And that's what you're buying fish out of. So the farms aren't drastically adjusting their water parameters. The distributors aren't adjusting their water parameters, and neither are the fish stores. Why should you? The answer is you shouldn't, unless you're going to breed or unless they're wild caught. I feel sorry for wild caught fish because they've been through that whole chain before they get to you. They don't even remember what their water's supposed to feel like. But anyway, listen, there are certain fish that are more sensitive than others. I know people are going to say this in the comments and they're going to try to call me out and all this kind of stuff. I know, but listen, I'm talking to the vast majority of this hobby. The vast majority of the hobby is not a nerd like you that's going to make all of these massive adjustments, mix up their buffers every day and all this kind of nonsense. They want no part of that. They just want to put fish in the water that they have that comes out of their tap, put some water conditioner in it, and everything's fine. That's what they want. I know you don't believe me, but the vast majority of this hobby is that way. And so for those people, understand that when you go to your fish store, they haven't adjusted their water drastically. When the fish were sent to the fish store from the distributor, they also didn't adjust their parameters, and most likely the farms didn't either. So why should you? You really shouldn't. Most fish that are in this hobby are going to be fine in your tap water. I mean, unless you live just outside of a rock quarry and you're trying to keep wild caught discus or something crazy, you're probably not going to have any issues where you need to drastically alter your water parameters. Go with what you have out of the tap and just be happy with this hobby. And the last thing that I want to say about this is let's just use a wee bit of common sense, shall we? If you look up a particular fish and it says that it comes from very soft water with a very low pH, and you go to start making drastic adjustments, you could actually be doing more harm than good. And here's why. We've been talking about it the whole time. That fish was bred most likely in water that's very similar to yours. It's completely different than what that AI synopsis on Google says that it should have. And so it's been born in that. It's been raised in that. It's grown to be a juvenile or maybe even adult before it was sold to you at the fish store. If you go and drastically alter the water parameters, you think the fish is going to like that? I bet they won't, because that's not what they're used to. Yes, it might be what they would want if they were pulled from the wild like Nemo and carried in the bag and shaken up and then brought home and put into your tank. Maybe they do want it that way, but not if they were bred in water that's very similar to yours. You'll actually be harming that fish. While you think you're doing the right thing, you're actually hurting the fish. So don't do that. Look up the fish that you're trying to keep, particularly from where you're buying them from. Find out, where are they coming from? Trust me, these fish stores know. They don't just say, oh, I don't know. They come from wherever. No, they know where the fish came from. Ask them, find out. As long as they're not wild caught, you should have to make really no alterations to your water whatsoever. Because listen, the fish store that's there local to you, their water is probably almost identical to yours. They haven't adjusted their water. Why should you adjust yours? If they're doing fine at the fish store, they're going to do fine in your water when they get home. So listen, I'm repeating myself over and over and over again, and that's what I don't like doing. That's why I like to work off of a script. Don't let this be something that scares you away. If you're somebody that's new to this, or even if you're not new, you've been doing this for a while, but you're looking at a new fish that you haven't kept yet, and you're not concerned about breeding them and you're not going to get them wild caught. If you're scared that you might need to make all of these massive adjustments and you start needing to mix up baking soda and salt and all of this, don't let that scare you, because you probably don't have to do it. You'll probably not want to do it because you could hurt the fish. So anyway, I hope that helps. I have a website. It's called keepfishkeeping.com. If you want to buy fish stuff, that's a great place to do it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.